Please give a warm welcome to Steven Soderbergh and his muse, Gina Carano. Gina, I've got to start out by asking you the question that everybody here is wondering. Who's tougher, Michael Fassbender or Ewan McGregor?
They were both equally tough.
Very good diplomatic
Michael's very
art.
tricky and Ewan's pretty smart.
And Ewan's a Jedi too.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. That's it.
What's that? Yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to ask, really. Steven, you were in a hotel room watching TV, channel surfing it by the sounds of it, and you discovered Gina on television. How did things then turn into this movie? Can you take us through the steps?
Well, it was total happenstance. They had these Saturday night fights on CBS for a while. I don't know why they stopped. But I happened upon this literally the beginning. You were on the undercard. There was a big fight, and they had two fights before. And I see Gina coming out. She's got the cornrows, and she's got the sort of warrior affect. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And she just she destroyed this woman in a cage, and I just hadn't seen anything like this before, and I kind of filed it away. I just thought it was fascinating, that she was a fascinating combination of elements. I saw her interviewed afterwards, and she seemed very, very genuine, very sincere, not. You see some people who do this for a living. You watch wrestlers and whatever. I mean, they're living in the third person. They're not. They're not people you'd want to hang out with, I think. And so I kind of filed it away. And then a few months later, I think I saw a fight you had after that, and then you had the fight with Christian Santos. So this is June of '09. And I think if it wasn't the same week, it was almost the same week. I got fired off Moneyball, and you lost that fight. And I started thinking, I've always wanted to make a spy movie, but one sort of in the vein of the '60s spy movies. I know I've talked about From Russia with Love, but I also really love the Harry Palmer films with Michael Caine, Funeral in Berlin especially. And I thought, why don't I combine these two ideas? Why can't she be Bond, or why can't she be Harry Palmer? And so I reached out to her people, and I took the train to San Diego to meet her a week after that fight, and said, do you want to be in a movie?
Did you believe him? I mean, what was your reaction to, Steven Soderbergh wanting you to be in a movie and you had no acting experience? A lot of other kinds of experience.
Well, I actually didn't really know who he was at the time.
I didn't know who I was that week.
And I was kind of, I was really numb from the experience I just had. I expected to do so much better in that fight. So it was really kind of perfect timing, I think, to jump into a different job and especially this kind of job.
You then teamed up with Lem Dobbs. Did you have already the germ of an idea of what the story would be, or did you just sit down with him and map it out?
Yeah, I said, look, I got this thing. It all happened very quickly. Once she said yes, we started pitching the idea. We didn't go to a lot of people, but I called Lem immediately because I really felt, in a way, it was kind of a companion piece to The Limey. It was a revenge movie. It was nonlinear, as I imagined it. Lem and I had a complex relationship. On the two films we'd done prior, I thought it'd be nice to sort of have a trilogy. And and sort of gave him the basic idea, and he started throwing ideas back immediately. And it all came together very quickly. I mean, we met in June. We were shooting February 1st. So while we were writing the script, she went into training, into surveillance, counter-terrorist, all kinds of stuff.
Brainwashing.
So you developed a whole new skill set as a result.
Yeah, stun fighting and ex-Mossad training.
Did you have any kind of input into the script? Did you say, I don't see myself doing that, but I see myself doing this? Or
No.
At any point,
No. I just went with it. I was just excited to be a part of it, really.
They built the perfect vehicle.
She was busy. You went into
So
this.
busy.
This training was nuts.
Yeah.
That she went through.
Like 3 hours of stunts in the morning, and then 3 hours of Mossad training, like M4, miniature Uzi, Glock. Aaron Cohen, who's
He was in Duve Devant, which is different than Mossad. Actually, I think they hate each other. There's some whole
whoops, all this time.
Yeah, there's a whole
Well, anyways, he
Yeah.
put a damn GPS on my car and tracked me and made me extremely paranoid. So.
Do you feel? Could you say what part of you most overlaps with Mallory as a character? I mean, what part of you do you feel is up there on the screen, apart from the fighting stuff?
Oh, I was going to say the aggressive part. I think maybe just the will to survive.
I was struck by something watching it the second time in how you delivered your dialogue. Apart from when you're talking to Channing Tatum, where you're quite normal, with everybody else there's a certain kind of, I'm not sure what the word is, but there's a certain kind of authority about how you talk to everybody. And I was very struck by that way of delivering things. Was that something that just came out naturally, or was that something that you and Steven arrived at?
I definitely think that's something that me and Steven arrived at.
No, I mean we were, when I talked to Lem about the character, I said, look, she's got to be a female Clint. It's got to be, the way she speaks has to be very terse, very lean, like no wasted words, no wasted energy. Just her whole way of being needs to be really kind of minimalist. And so with that, I think when apart from the fact that Gina as an athlete has a physicality that I think is really difficult to fake if you're not an athlete, and the fact that there were two things that I was convinced by, when we met and talked. Two things you need if you're going to be on screen. One is what to do with your body, just physically what to do with your body, and the other is what you do with your eyes. If you know those two things, you can everything's going to be fine. So I sensed that wasn't that she could do this. I really felt she could do it. And my job then became convincing her that she could do it, because it's one thing, she would tell you, it's one thing to go into a cage and fight something. It's another thing to be standing in front of Michael Douglas and having to deliver dialogue. It's terrifying.
Yeah, definitely.
When I was introducing the movie, I said I said it was no frills, but I realized watching it again that actually there's a lot of frills in one particular area, and that's in the music. I'm trying to imagine what the movie would be like without the music. The music is really unusual, and usually music in movies I find really intrusive and really spoils the mood. Here the music was really to the fore, but it really seemed to kind of accentuate things. So I'm wondering if you could talk about your collaboration with, was it David Holmes? David Holmes, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the particular style that you chose is really, it seems like a little bit of a throwback to music maybe in the late 60s.
Oh, absolutely. Part of the reason to make the film, part of the reason I think you make any film, possibly, is in reaction to something else that you've seen. In this case, in reaction to a lot of other action films that I've seen, in which I felt the music was not memorable, in which I felt the music was intrusive, in which I felt the music was an attempt to hide something or distract you from the fact that they didn't have the goods. And so we talked a lot about the feel of the music and also when it would be used, because rule number one for us was we're not going to score the action sequences. We do when she's running, like that was sort of our rule. If she's running around, then we can have some music. But if she's hitting people, there's no music. And you know, we kind of stuck to that. There was a lot of discussion internally for a while about whether or not that would work, particularly in the final fight with her and Ewan on the beach. There was a sense that, you know, come on, it's the last one. You know, won't you just come on, put something there? And I just thought, no, I like the sound of the ocean. I like the sound of their feet on the sand. I like the, you know, we can't just switch. We can't just violate our aesthetic in the last, you know, 3 minutes of the movie, because that's what people tend to do. And so, you know, hopefully the things that are potentially worrisome when you're making a movie because they're not traditional will end up being the things that people like about it. That's our hope.
Were there any other particular rules you set yourself for this one?
Mostly about camera movement, composition, cutting. You know, except for the Barcelona sequence, there's no handheld work in the movie, and even the fact that that's handheld is kind of mitigated by the fact that I'm off speed, and so the fact that it's slow motion doesn't make it feel like typical handheld. You know, can't move the camera unless the subject in the frame is moving. I'm a big believer in every shot, every cut there needs to be a reason. You know, I believe in like no wasted images at all. That doesn't mean that you can't. I believe as a filmmaker, you should be able to generate a lot of good images quickly, but you should also be willing to use them. You should be willing to toss them off. You know what I mean? Just because you've come up with a good shot doesn't mean you need to hold it for a while. But I felt like every image needs to be something worth looking at. That was my other frustration. Is I don't know, why do action movies? Why aren't they beautiful? Why can't you make an action movie that looks beautiful? I don't understand. I see a lot of action films that I think are good action films, but they're not beautiful to look at, and that didn't make sense to me.
Did you approach each of the fights differently as a filmmaker, or did you have a different idea or a different feel for each of the? I think there's 4 major fights and 1 small fight.
Well, the way in which I tried to differentiate them is not so much in the shooting and the cutting, but in where they took place, and what the environment was. For instance, the fight with Ewan at the end of the film, we tried something that is potentially, if not dangerous, stupid, which was, I said, look, I want the whole fight to take place at that moment where the sun is about to hit the horizon. Now, anybody that works in a movie knows that's about 45 minutes a day that you have that window. So what we decided was we're going to shoot that entire sequence over 2 days in that 45 minutes where we have that window of time. I'm really glad we did, because it doesn't look like scenes that are fight scenes, but it was a scramble. Like we were moving so fast. The good news was they were so well rehearsed that I didn't have to wait on them. But I mean, there's 58 setups in that scene, so you're shooting 25 setups in 45 minutes. Like, that's fast. Like, you're doing 1 or 2 takes and you're moving to the next thing. You got 2 cameras. And we also had to sort of reverse engineer it, because the sun is supposed to be going down as the sequence goes on, but we're not shooting in sequence. So I had to write out on a piece of paper which shot we should be doing in that 45-minute piece of time that we had for those 2 days. It was, I suck at math, and this was a math problem. And so it was tricky, and that last shot of her walking away was like the last shot we got on the second day, just as the sun was going away. I thought, okay, we got away with that. But the point is, that was the approach for that scene that was going to make it different from another fight scene in the movie, like the hotel room. I wanted to take advantage of the environment to make it singular, if we could.
The hotel room sequence in particular made me think of the movie you mentioned maybe in one of your interviews, From Russia with Love, the final fight in the train carriage, in the train compartment between Robert Shaw and Sean Connery, which is like one of the great movie fights of all time. And it's
great because Robert Shaw is probably literally the only villain in a Bond film ever you thought he could take Sean Connery. Like you could go, that could go either way, and that's what makes it really, really intense. But I love that. That was the other thing I loved, is the enclosed space, like not a lot of room. But I also like the idea of trashing a 4-star hotel suite. I just thought,
you've never done that before?
Well, I wish I had the spine to do that, because I've read about it, and I know it would contribute greatly to my mystique, and might even get me more critical attention. But I just can't. I have too much respect for other people's stuff. I would never trash something that belonged to somebody else. I just think that's not cool.
It's a hotel. It doesn't belong to anyone, mate.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It does.
Just one last question about style, and then I'm going to turn it over to these guys. I was really struck as well by how in the first action sequence, the sound becomes really muffled. And I was really curious about that choice. I thought it was really striking.
You mean in the diner?
No, oh, sorry, the second one. In Barcelona,
Right.
the whole part of the.
Well, that was, again, that was an example of showing up the morning of shooting that sequence, knowing we have to do something to distinguish it from all the other action sequences that we have in the film. So I'd been having these conversations with Greg Jacobs, my producer and first AD, about, I said, we need a gimmick, is what I said. We need a gimmick. We need a hook. Like, this sequence we need to do something with it. And he would go, yeah, we do. What is it? And for weeks, I go, I don't know. And then we showed up that morning, and most of the film is shot with pretty wide lenses. And I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go off speed, we're going to go handheld, and we're going to go with long lenses up until the point where she leaves the car, sees him running away, and takes off on foot. Then we're going to return to the aesthetic that's consistent with the rest of the film. So I knew from that point on that that we were going to have to do something sort of abstract with the sound to match what we were doing visually. But all of that flowed from that decision that morning of, okay, here's how we're going to do it.
Okay. Questions out there? Yes, you.
Stoner or Stellar? Stellar. I'm never sure why people say yes or no, and people say no. People say no a lot still. In this case, we were really fortunate that almost everyone said yes right away, mostly because they were really intrigued by Gina. I encouraged all of them to go online and check her out, and
Damn YouTube.
they were really intrigued by her and the idea of it. Especially Antonio. I remember having a conversation on the phone with Antonio, and because he had gone on and done some searches on you before I talked to him on the phone, and he just loved the whole idea of it. He just said, "I just want to be a part of something in which a woman gets to do this." He goes, "It just sounds like a fun thing to do," and he was kind of doing us a favor, really. And I'm really glad he did. And he's a guy. I mean, to a person, all these guys these are people that get up in the morning, they have fun until they pass out at night. I'm sorry, that's Michael.
They're beautiful, beautiful people. I'm a fan of their work, but I'm forever a fan of the genuine human beings that they are.
Yes.
Where Gina's character Mallory just comes out of nowhere, and it's like there's not any thing creeping up, any sort of suspense with it. It just comes out of nowhere like some almost supernatural force, which in a way she kind of becomes at the end in her father's house in New Mexico. It's the first time I think we see her in the cornrows, and she has that camouflage stuff on, and at the end like appearing in Mallorca with the cornrows and stuff. It's just almost become like a superhero at that point. And I was wondering if did you definitely build to a thing like that? Or,
Yeah, just to repeat the question. Towards the end of the film, Mallory seems to kind of take on an almost superhero kind of quality when she comes at Ewan Mcgregor on the beach. She sort of comes out of nowhere, and their appearance has changed. There's the cornrows, and so was that something that was in either of your minds?
Yeah, like I said, I just love that look on her. I just think it's real. I couldn't pull that off, or the wetsuit, frankly. But I just, like I said, that was a callback to, for me, the first time I ever saw her, and was immediately hooked. And I really wanted I really wanted the movie to land there. And at that point, yeah, she's what we call the red mist. Like, she's in that mode now. There's no talking to her. She is sort of a superhero at that point. So, yeah, I like too that he's out there on the beach, and she's there. She's been waiting. She knows where he is, and she's just waiting. And it's going to end badly. So, although Ewan McGregor pitching me sequel ideas.
Yeah, I was thinking sequel, prequel.
Yeah, apparently he's going to only have 1 foot, but he's pitching hard.
Yes.
I'm wondering about the stunt fighting versus real fighting for Gina. Like, suddenly you're fighting people who you can't actually hit their $1 million faces. How would that change?
Question for Gina about the difference between real fighting and stunt fighting or play fighting, I suppose. Was it hard for you to switch gears like that?
Well, it was refreshing to be able to do a couple takes and not have to get it right on the first try. And it was really kind of, I walked into 8711, it's a stunt crew in Los Angeles, and we shared the same passion. And as soon as I walked in, they knew, every discipline I've done, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and they respected me as an athlete, and so we kind of coordinated these fight scenes, and there's certain parts in the film where I'm like, I put that in there. But, all the actors were just they wanted to do everything themselves. Even if they were off film, they wanted to be there, and they didn't want any stunt doubles. They wanted to be completely physical.
Did you hurt anyone?
We have some funny stories. Definitely. Ewan punched me in the head at one point, and I popped up, and I was like, "How's your hand?" Because I know what it's like to hit somebody in the head with your hand, and it, unexpectedly, it could kind of hurt. And I get punched in the head all the time. So It's okay with me.
When you watch movie fights, in other movies, are you kind of a connoisseur of those fight scenes? I mean, do they seem fake? Do they seem real? Do you have a kind of a benchmark for what's a good movie fight in any of the movies you've seen?
Well, I think that definitely I watch fights, and you definitely critique them. But I'm not a judgmental person. I've been judged the majority of my life, and so if I don't like the fight scene, then I'll look at the acting and be like, well, damn, I really grew attached to that character. So I'm just trying to bring my kind of physicality to the role, and I think that hopefully that comes off in the movie.
Well, I know Channing Tatum told his dad, I'm going to go to this movie with this woman, and it's an action movie, and there are fights in it. And Channing's dad said to him, look, when somebody makes something in which a woman can really kick a guy's ass, maybe I'll go. And after Channing said after he got home, he goes, you gotta go see this.
Yeah.
When I was watching this movie, I kept thinking about sort of the transformation that Jennifer Lopez did in Out of Sight, and seeing that you're making this same sort of transition from being from like sort of a niche market, or as I know nothing about any mixed martial arts or anything like that, to becoming a movie star or film star. How do you see yourself as this as being a vehicle for something bigger for you?
The question was, this viewer was reminded, watching Gina tonight, was reminded of Jennifer Lopez in Out of Sight, in the sense that she was seeing somebody transitioning into a new, phase of her career. And the question is for Gina, I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel you're kind of going through a transition now where you're going to continue in the movies and become a movie star?
Well, I would be stupid to say I would never do that again, because I absolutely would do it 1,000,000 times over. It was the most beautiful experience. I mean, I got to travel to different places I've never been. I got to meet some wonderful, beautiful people that are so talented in what they do, and of course I'd love to. So we'll see, though. I mean, nothing's ever guaranteed. I'm kind of like floating in between worlds right now, but I really couldn't be more grateful to sit here tonight. I'm just going to enjoy it right now.
Have there been any roles offered yet?
There's been some stuff that have come across our desk, but I think from another actress I heard the other night, she just said, be smart and pick good things to be a part of, and only do if it feels right. And so, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard to follow up something, like this.
Yeah, that's the trouble with him. When you've been in one of his films, it kind of spoils everything for everybody. It's downhill after that.
That's what everybody keeps saying.
Yes, you. It's never the guy I'm pointing at that answers.
You should know their names.
Go.
I just had a question about the action in the film. I just thought it was so brutal, but yet it was very bloodless. Like you created so much, there's so much usually in the action sequences without showing a lot of violence. How did you create this? Was it through the sound, the cinematography?
There was a lot of discussion about the blood. Because in theory, you could justify a lot of it if you wanted to. And at a certain point, we decided we didn't want to go that way because it would become distracting, frankly. And I didn't want to distract from the sort of choreography of the physicality of what they were doing. So, we'd give them a little bit, but we could have gone a lot further. One interesting thing that happened in the last couple of weeks was we went through this ratings thing with the MPAA, where the film's rated R right now, which I wouldn't ordinarily have had a problem with, except that I'd seen some films recently that were rated PG-13 that I thought were much more violent, and actually involved teenage girls. And we went through this whole process, and I sort of made my argument, and I lost.
Yes. Yeah.
You. Brian. No, what's your name? John. Sorry, I was close.
John.
There are some films being directed right now that have action scenes with spies in European cities, and they're shot completely differently than this. And I mean, do you feel that and that's completely not how you obviously directed this movie. I mean, do you feel that that's become banal at this point? I mean, do you roll your eyes when you see these scenes that are cut? I don't know. Does that bother you at all?
You mean the Bourne films, right?
They did it in Inception too.
It's just a different aesthetic, and it's not my aesthetic. And the issue for me was, if we have people that can really do it, we need to make sure that the way we're designing the shots and the cuts always, amplify this idea that we have people that can really do this. So that's just a choice. I'm just someone who has made movies employing that approach before. It's just something I don't feel like returning to. It's not that I feel like it's a bad choice. It's just a choice that if I were to employ it on this, would feel like I'm falling back on something that I'd done before, whether it's Traffic or any number of films where I've employed a more sort of rough aesthetic. I really wanted something more classical, my approach when we were, because I don't storyboard, I see them rehearse it on set, and then I make the decision about how we're going to do it. And my whole thing is, how long can I hold a shot before it won't work anymore? Meaning, if there's a punch being thrown, the camera has to be in a certain place for the punch to look like it's landing. So you can hold the shot to a certain point until it's at an angle where the punch looks wrong. Then I know, okay, that's my cut point. Then, I'm somewhere else. How long can I hold that shot until something that they're doing won't look right? That's the approach I was taking, is how long can I hold a shot? Because they could do it. I mean, they'd been rehearsing the thing. They could do the whole thing if I could figure out how to do it in one shot. I just couldn't. So it was, for instance, when they come in the door in the hotel room, having watched them rehearse it, I looked at it and went, okay, I can hold this shot until he throws her out of frame. And that was take one. Something happened, the lamp thing happened, which had never happened before in rehearsal. And I saw that first take. It was the first shot of that sequence that we did. And I went, okay, we got it, we're moving on. And that sort of set the tone for how quickly we were going to move. And also, because there are stunts involved, and I'm always worried that somebody's going to get hurt, if I got it, I moved on. I didn't go, well, let's do another one. Because I knew, somebody could get hurt. When you've got that kind of force being exerted by two people, something can go wrong. I mean, you hit him in the head with the vase. That was kind of his fault, a little bit. It was. He looked. They told him, she's going to grab for the vase. Don't look at the vase. And he looked at the vase, and she hit him in the eye with it. That's the take we used. But that was his fault. It was. It was fun to sort of discover it in a way as we were doing it, and have to sort of create the shots, on a moment-to-moment basis, keying off of what they were doing. Again, that's something that I might not have done 20 years ago, but I felt like that was the way to do this.
Well, we have time for one more question.
One more. It's going to be good.
You. Yes, you.
Gina seems very natural. What was the process to turn her into an actor?
What was the process of turning Gina into an actress? And she seems very natural.
Thank you.
Well, look, the whole idea was, can I sort of get her to be like this? but with a camera rolling. And that's not always an easy thing to do. I'd had some amount of experience dealing with either people who were not actors at all and were playing themselves or playing a version of themselves. And I felt like the most important thing was the environment, that the environment needs to be supportive, needs to be calm, needs to be comfortable. They need to feel like there's a net there, that there's nothing, nobody's sort of gonna, rag on them if it's not going perfectly. And so that was my job. I don't know what your impression of the whole thing was, but I felt like my job was to make her want to get up and go to work.
And it was incredibly safe to be vulnerable with people. I mean, he knows that, I know that he knows that he brought me in knowing that I had no clue what a movie set really was. And all the actors have, we see them in movies we love, we see them in movies we hate. They've been completely shredded throughout, public eye. And I think that those are the best people to be vulnerable in front of, because they're not judgmental. So it was incredibly comfortable instead of, it was incredibly comfortable to be vulnerable and experiment.
Okay, Steven Soderbergh, Gina Carano.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.